Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Craig Laforest here. Where are we today? November the 5th in Sydney, Australia. It's just gone 2 p.m. in the afternoon, and I have some wonderful news. We've got Daniel Azulay from the Netherlands on today, and he's at 4 o'clock in the morning, and he's going to give us an update on what he does and how he is a victim of V2K and microwave, and his organization Subliminal Industries. So please, I'd like to welcome Daniel. Thank you for being here so early in the morning, mate. And if you'd like to start with just a brief introduction, a short history on your background, where you've come from and how you've got involved with V2K targeting and microwave.
All right. Well, yeah, my name's Daniel from the Netherlands. I'm 38 years old, and I've been a victim of V2K for at least, must be 4 years now, 4 or 5 years. And my background is I studied psychology in university, and I did cognitive psychology as a master's degree. And then after that, I decided I wanted to be a programmer. So I changed my career to become a developer and did different kinds of things. So yeah, somewhere along one of the jobs, the V2K started. That was 4 to 5 years ago. It started going on, but I didn't realize at first what it was. So in the beginning, I would just start hearing strange noises or creaking walls, the things that people often say. And yeah, in the beginning, we threw it on that it must be a psychosis. So I got involved with the mental health profession, and luckily I have a very understanding psychiatrist who along the way started to realize as well that something else was going on. And he's not the kind of person who is really willing to get involved in this, but he's there to support me, and I don't, I'm off medication and stuff like that, so that's a good situation. But yeah, it was a long struggle to get where I am. I'm still not in a good position, but I'm trying to, keep my head above water and keep working on, on finding out what's going on. That's become my mission.
Daniel, you're having the V2K every single day and the microwave
Yes.
burning every day?
Yeah, pretty much every day. The V2K is 24/7, even when I'm sleeping. And the voices start as soon as I wake up. I notice that my dreams have been guided or influenced, and that's also V2K. It's just it's guiding you through your dreams, and it's also programming certain images and stuff. And that's 24/7. And the microwave burning has been very heavy for a long time, but lately it's kind of been letting up. Multiple things led to that, I think. First of all, I figured out that there's a way to block a lot of it. It's a bit involved, but once you get it done, it's pretty effective for most of it. You still feel it, but it's not as bad. I'll explain that later.
Okay.
And second of all, I'm just getting.
Where are you getting most of your burns when they do happen? They typically happen at nighttime or during the day to you?
It's mostly nighttime. Actually, it normally starts when you start to relax. So if it's nighttime or daytime isn't really a distinction, but the thing is, when you start to relax, you want to lay down for a bit. That's when it always starts. So, but mostly nighttime, therefore.
Yeah.
And yeah, random body areas actually everywhere. But there are some notable ones, like the corner of your eyebrow or here, specific place on your nose, or it pinches you here, or along the body, mostly in the sides, in the legs, also in the private parts, a lot, and most of all the feet.
A lot of us go through exactly the same thing, Daniel. I get it in my feet and my legs very badly, all the way up to my groin area. I'm burnt consistently through there. I'm burnt on those areas, as you've said, on the face, the chest and the arms, and you can literally feel the waves of microwave coming over you. And it typically, again, happens to me in the middle of the night when I'm so isolated in my bed, and also I can be in a restaurant, I can be on a ship anywhere in the world, and I feel the microwaves coming into my body. So the transition from you understanding that something was happening to you, and I think it's thank God that you're able to sit down and be able to explain this, because so many people typically believe that this is a psychosis or people are going
Yes.
crazy
Yeah.
when they
Yeah.
experience this. And we know now, because of the millions of people who are afflicted with this, that is simply not the case. So you went through this transition of understanding that you were part of something bigger. The CIA had
Yes.
their own program with MK Ultra and Monarch. Would you like to
Yeah.
just talk about that briefly?
Absolutely. Yes. Well, there was a specific moment because I had two phases. I like to say there was a pause in my targeting, and that was when I left one job number of years ago and went into another job. It let up a little bit. But then I went on vacation with two of my best friends, and as soon as I came back, it hit me again, and the voice started coming back, and it was very extreme at that moment, and things just started happening that didn't make sense. And being a psychologist, I recognized that at some point I started to recognize this cannot be a psychosis because of the first of all the complexity of it. It was way too complex, and I started noticing specific things. I can't exactly remember what made it click, but I think it had to do with the story that was being presented to me, so that my neighbors were MIVD and AIVD agents, which is the Dutch security services, and I just knew, actually in the back of my head, I knew that wasn't true. And that's when I started thinking, wait a minute, they're using all these intelligence terms, and that's a world that I normally have nothing whatsoever to do with. So it's not inside my own psyche. It's not a theme for me. It's not something I worry about normally. And I started thinking about that, and I started realizing more and more that the symptoms that I was having are not psychosis, because I was having the muscle spasms, I was having the
Yeah,
burning,
yeah.
and
Which is
things that I could see.
yeah, which is
Yeah.
atypical of somebody who has psychosis.
Yes,
Exactly. Yeah,
you don't get muscle spasms all over your body, and the thing that also made it click was the tinnitus.
yeah,
The tinnitus that started out as tinnitus, but later on it started to become voice modulated tinnitus as well. And I started to realize that it would always happen. These things would always happen if I wanted to do something. So I noticed there was a pattern in it that was trying to prevent me from doing things, and I remember there was a specific incident or episode when I was in bed, and there was this kind of interrogation mode going on. And that's when I realized that the methods they were using, or the methods these voices, what I still thought were voices, maybe not, were using, it suddenly clicked that these were programming techniques.
mm, mm,
And I started researching the specific um, structure of what was happening, and I ended up finding out about Monarch programming, and it was the Wizard of Oz style Monarch programming that was actually done to me, and
yeah,
that's when it really clicked that this was a mind control program.
yeah.
And
So,
yeah,
ladies and gentlemen, here's a very bright young man who is so articulate in what he's gone through. And I think it's important that you have family members and friends who don't understand what's going on
yeah,
with people who say that they are hearing voices very clearly or are getting burnt very clearly, and they can show you where the burns are. This is a
yeah,
young man, as many people are going through a similar situation, who you need to listen to, because and I know also with the AI, they started speaking German to you while you were watching
yes,
a German
yeah,
series.
yeah. That was an
It's
error, I think.
amazing. And I
Yeah,
lived in the United
yeah,
States for 28 years, and they speak to me in an American accent sometimes, and then
yeah,
in an Australian accent. So can you
yeah,
can you just
yeah.
give us a bit of information about what happened when you were watching this German
Well, that's
series?
not. There's a little bit of a prequel to that because yeah, I have family in the UK, and last time I went to the UK, over here the voices, because I think in English and in Dutch, but usually in English. Um, so the voices are usually Dutch and English, but in the Netherlands they have a clear Dutch accent. Like it's Dinglish. It's like it's very, it has a thick Dutch accent, a little bit like me now because I don't speak English that often anymore. But as soon as I got on the plane, when the plane was halfway across to the United Kingdom, snap! It was the male voice took on a characteristic UK voice, and one of the female voices took on a characteristic Australian accent. And that's when I thought, all right, so there's like different voice models being loaded here right now. So that was a difference. But what happened recently was I've had an episode a little bit similar before, but that was a trick. I was a couple of, or maybe a year ago, I was watching an Italian movie, and then the V2K started sort of babbling in Italian, but that was a trick because I sort of looked up what does that mean. It didn't mean much of anything, so that was just like mimicking the sounds or something. But this time, that was a couple of weeks ago, I was sitting here on the couch watching a German series, and I was really focusing because I didn't want to hear that voice. So I was focusing on the voice very, very intensely in the series. And suddenly it kind of clicked and it started speaking fluent German with a different accent again, but same kind of voice characteristics, but different, real German accent.
Yeah.
That was amazing. So that's when I
Yeah.
thought, it must, maybe if you concentrate on a language very intensely, the AI will think that it has to speak that language or something. I don't know, or it was a trick.
So Daniel, the common tropes, the targeting, evolution, neighbors, colleagues, friends, family, we all get bombarded with different versions from different people about, you know, a neighbor is involved in this and they're doing this through the walls of your home, or if you're away on a trip somewhere, they're in the next room to you. This is part of this CIA Monarch program that they have developed to confuse people. What do you think about that when you hear about this?
Well, it's a quite complex topic because it's actually what I think what's being done is real-time mass sort of multiplayer psyop thing. But I think this system kind of identifies a situation in a person's life that is an opportunity for it to enter, so to speak. Like it's an opportunistic system. So or it just analyzes kind of the patterns of your life and then figures out which of the tropes to use on you. And in most cases, you know, almost everybody has neighbors. So where does it usually start? With the neighbors. That's like it started with me. The story was that my neighbors were AIVD and MIVD agents with electromagnetic weapons, and they were, you know, through the wall shooting at me. Of course, I never saw them, but that was the story. And sadly, because the rest of the targeting is so intense, you can get very sick from it. That kind of breaks down your ability to think logically and critically. And I think a lot of people sort of succumb to that, and they lose track of what's real and what's not. But that, having said that, I think there is something very nasty going on in states like the United States, Australia, and the UK, and maybe I've heard a little bit of it in Germany, and that is the gang stalking thing, which is real. So there are cases of people being harassed by people, but I think the percentage of the percentage of situations where the neighbors are actually involved is very small in comparison to the percentage of cases where the neighbors are really well, V2K hallucinations, and not hallucinations, but V2K programs being played into your brain. But yeah, that's how it usually starts. It's usually the neighbors first, then you can hear things about your friends, your colleagues. If that fails, you know, first they'll start to try to isolate you from your inner circle, from your friends, from your neighbors. That's the goal, to get you to act out against your neighbor or against your friends, or to say something weird, to create sort of static and slowly wean you out of your social uh, circle.
Yeah.
I think that's goal number one, and then it goes on to your colleagues on your workplace. It starts planting stories in your head that you will maybe start to worry about, or you don't know what's going on, so you might ask around, and it might that might strike somebody at your work in a weird way or something. It's all carefully programmed. But after that, if all that fails and there's no way for this system to latch on to your social circle, which was the case with me, I have a number of very good friends that I can lean on, and my father's side of my family really supports me in this. They all believe me. I have my psychiatrist behind me, and that's good. So that was not an option. But what it does then, it starts looking for, and there's a paper on this, on exploiting people's superstitions for psyops. That's a very old paper from the 50s, but that's what this does. It starts accessing themes like aliens, demons, ghosts, apparitions, your dead relative,
Yeah.
and starts doing things like that. And with me, there was a very strong aliens theme because, I'm not really a UFO buff or anything, and I don't believe that's going on because I see it as a big psyop, but I'm very interested in the topic. So I spent a lot of time online looking at that stuff, and I think the system interpreted it as that I was easily swayed towards that topic, which was a mistake. So it
It's
tried that on me.
it's
Yeah,
stunning. It's stunning the people that they choose to target, and we know from our research that approximately 60% are ladies and 40% are men. And it's amazing that the correlation of discussions that we all have about what they tell us initially, because we know that transmission happens through the eyes as well. So it's very easy if we talk about gang stalking. Once we recognize that the data is out there, the research is out there for people to transmit through their eyes, it's very easy to pick up a story about somebody and the friends that they associate with and where they've lived and so forth. It's just so easy to create
yeah,
that story so that
yeah,
the individual looks back and says, wow, you've been around for a while to pick on me, to
yes,
pick on a psychologist, to pick on somebody who's
yeah,
in the jobs that I have traveled the world so much and met so many people in many spheres of business. They've chosen their people very, very carefully. I also wanted to talk about
well, Craig,
how,
let me hook into that for a
yeah,
second because I think there's a very good reason that the system knows so much. I think we all know that Snowden revealed that there were a number of programs running that were intercepting, for instance, phone calls and storing them. And that came out that was happening. I think the reason why these voices are so realistic and the reason why they know so much about everybody is because there's been a covert operation going for a long time that has been using telecom infrastructure to do audio eavesdropping with millimeter wave or in any case phased array special techniques that can detect submillimeter vibrations, and that way the system has been able to listen in on everybody everywhere where there is telecom infrastructure for decades, and it's built up a database of every language on the planet, every dialect, every subculture's dialect, uh, every trope, and that's what's really been going on with those programs, and I think that's being put to use right now. Um, so yeah,
how when it, I know that you've talked about the fact that V2K suggested to you that you weren't implanted. I know back in the 50s when the MK Ultra program came out in 1953 through to 1972, supposedly people believed that they were chipped,
yes,
implanted, and the voices told you that you had been initially chipped or implanted or not. They eventually
um,
turned around and said you were not implanted.
yes, it took a while, but it's more like the system kind of gave up with the psyop because there was a period where I was in doubt, and especially there was a period when I had to be I had to go to the psych ward. I was that lost from the targeting, and I was completely. I needed to. In the Netherlands, it's really relaxed. It's not like America where you get locked up. You can do it voluntarily, and they ask you, "Do you need a timeout?" So I said yes. I'd like to stay there for a couple of days or a week. I went there, and when I was there, they did this thing where they said that I had, with my vaccine, I had got a nanotech implant was injected into me, and that it was actually meant to not cross the brain barrier or something, and it accidentally did. That was the psyop, and this and that it was two-way communication, and it was only supposed to have been one-way communication,
So
and
this
that
is
I
this is
was
what the
that's what
voices,
the voices were saying.
that's what the
Yes,
voices told you.
yeah, and that's how these psyops work. But eventually, I kind of poked through it, and I started researching, what's possible, what's feasible, and what's logical. And Occam's razor says that, yeah, of course, there are going to be people who really do have implants, still new TIs as well. There's going to be a subset of them because this these initiatives, these Brain Initiative and others like it, these programs, they will try different technologies on different people. But I
Mm.
think the 80 to 90% is all radio frequency based and not with no implants. But yeah, what I was going to say about that, yeah, of course I had an MRI and there's absolutely no implant in
Nothing.
my head, so I know
Nothing.
that for
Yeah.
sure. And otherwise, the logical thing is it can be dangerous to implant people if you don't know their technical skills or if you have a misconception about their technical skills,
Mm.
because an implant needs to communicate. If it's RF, you can potentially find it, and if it's communicating with ultrasound, like the newer stuff that DARPA makes, you can definitely find it. So
Yeah.
it's
I've
kind of a difficult thing to do. Yeah,
I've spoken to neurosurgeons in the past, and some of them are aware of what's going on with these technologies. And they've
yeah,
explained to me that when they go into the brain, they typically go in there to take out a tumor. However, through the MRI, they can see what are called LFOs, light foreign objects, and they connect themselves. They could be chips, they could be implants, they connect themselves to the skull, and we have what calcification happens. The bone
yeah.
grows over the implants
Grows
or the
over it.
chips, but they would never go into those areas. I've learned from other interviews that you've been involved in that you've made some technological discoveries. Can you tell us a little bit about those, please? You found the signal and so forth, RNM, and can you
Well,
tell us a little bit about that information?
I'm still researching it, but I think I have a very high chance of eventually finding out that it's true. Put it that way. Yeah, I was researching because well, that must have been 2 years ago by now, maybe even longer. I was playing around with like a software-defined radio. It's like a tiny little USB-sized thing you can stick into your laptop, and you can look at the radio spectrum a little bit. It's not very high tech or anything, but you can look around. That there was a signal back then. It was somewhere else, but it was slightly, its frequency bands were slightly moving with the voice that I was hearing. So I thought that's weird. So I kind of I made a bookmark in that program that I was using, which is GQRX. I made a bookmark to look at it later, and I was still doing it. So I thought, let's make a screen recording of this. While I was talking with the V2K, chatting two-way, and I was making the screen recording, and there was lots of mentions of mind control and this and that, and I started saying the words mind control like verbally in the screen recording, so it was recorded. I was thinking maybe I can record this and later do some statistical analysis or something. I don't know. I didn't have any idea what to do with
Yeah.
that yet. But the weird thing that happened was that was my old laptop, and it was hacked. The, as soon as I hit save on that screen recording, and I think it happened straight as it hit the hard drive. The audio track in the recording was you have the stereo track, so there's two tracks, left and right channel, and they are slightly different because I had my microphone on as well, so they should have noise that is different in both sides. So they were slightly different everywhere from each other, except in a place where I had mentioned mind control. It was all garbled. It was blah, 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 something like that. And I looked in the spectrum. I opened it in an audio application. I looked at the spec, the FFT of the spectral view, and I looked very closely, and I thought that little bit where I said that in both the channels, the left and the right, something has been inserted or garbled there, and it's been copied one to the other channel. And I thought, what the hell can do that? Like, because I thought that must be some kind of AI malware or
Of course it is. We
exploit,
we hear about this
some CIA
constantly.
tool.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
constantly.
So
We hear about computers and phones being hacked, and once
so
you're a victim of this technology, and I hope people
yeah,
understand this after what we're bringing them today, this is one of the components of what they do to people, and you're
yeah,
explaining yourself so well here.
yeah. And then what happened as well? I made lots of backups of this stuff, and at some point I had a new job, but this targeting started getting very bad. And that was when it tried. I thought it was making a deal with me. It said to me, "If you delete all your material, we're gonna leave you alone." So I went around and deleted everything. I asked my family and friends to delete the files I sent them, and they confirmed. And then it got even worse. So the targeting increased exponentially. But then, by some weird stroke of luck, I discovered that I had all of the files still in a different cloud service that I forgot about. And there was that video, and that's I think what it was all about. That's why they wanted to me to delete everything. So that video is safe and sound now, along with a lot of recordings of other stuff. So that's very strange, but that's kind of circumstantial proof. It doesn't prove anything specifically, but given all the other things that I'm discovering, it's going to be useful to see what kind of technique can do that. But anyway, to get back to the transmitter thing, to the signal thing, I was looking at that spectrum, and at some point I was, getting targeted very heavily, so I didn't do much with it. But later, I started looking again, and I found out that in I think September the frequency had shifted to a new area in the spectrum, and it's called VHF 3 Block 9C. At least in the Netherlands, that is where a system is supposed to be. That's only referred to very briefly, and in the Dutch frequency plan, it's only mentioned as being under study, and it doesn't mention the name of the system or anything. It just says it's a land mobile system, and something about that it's under study. So I had, and it made a reference to a document named Geneva. So I went to search what is Geneva, and it turns out it's a radio convention sort of journal where they make plans for the radio spectrum management stuff. And in that document, I could find the name, and the name was Land Mobile System R1 dash medical telemetry. And there's a number of red flags with that system because it says it's medical telemetry, but it's operating at a digital video frequency. And it has two parts in the spectrum now, and I'll explain later the relation between the two. But it's very suspect because there's a part that's centered around 206 megahertz. That's right. And that one is the one that used to respond to my V2K with a frequency shift. And I've already figured out by doing some experiments that it's pointed straight at my head. And recently I found out that there's another part to it. That's the other one that's a bit lower in the spectrum, but it's also in VHF3, and it's somewhere around 194 megahertz. And this one, I was sitting on the couch and I had my SDR and I was watching it. And I thought, hey, that's the exact same kind of spectrum image that I saw in the other system. So I thought that must be related because it looks different from the DVB signals that are adjacent to it. And then I noticed something very peculiar in the lower one. I was watching it and I was breathing, and I suddenly noticed that when I was breathing, three of the bands would go like this, like that. They start moving in tandem with my breathing. And then I did an experiment. I thought to myself, okay, let's pretend that I'm breathing, but not actually inhale. So I went like that, like a movement, and the bands just stayed still. And then I started really breathing again, and it went like this. So that was immediately I knew that system is monitoring my breathing. So that is my prime interest at the moment, is getting to the bottom of what is Land Mobile System R1, what is it doing, how did it get here, and I've figured out a hell of a lot of history. And now tomorrow I'm getting a spectrum analyzer, which is going to be delivered tomorrow, and some other tools.
I want to talk about this with you a lot more, Daniel, in the future. We've got about 15 minutes today, and there's so many subjects I want to talk to you about this. So we will have another discussion, and hopefully it won't be at 4 o'clock in the morning for you. God bless.
Yeah.
But I wanted to, if you don't mind, I want to move on to look out for charlie.com, and I've had an opportunity to listen to that. You want to build a V2K decoder based on what he says. And there are so many people who are quietly hearing people telling them what to do, as we know.
Yeah.
I've experienced the obvious voices at night time. They can start off in any part of my head, and I have the disgusting nightmares which come in more so recently in the last 6 months than any time before. And I have this throughout the night. It's almost, as you are saying, it's almost all night long. And I have the very quiet voices starting off. And I saw in one of the episodes with Look Out for Charlie, where it was explained that people are hearing subconscious voices coming through and saying things like your husband is cheating, and they're able to direct this recorder to the person's head and literally pick up the voices saying that. So it's a manipulation where so many relationships can be destroyed simply because they're being subliminally talked to by people. It was overwhelming, and the research that he went into and the evidence was amazing to see. Amazing to see.
Yeah, well, Charlie is a very, very smart guy. Now we're dealing with, he calls it ELF. I also used to call it ELF a lot, but recently I figured out that it's more likely a regular, quite high-powered microwave beam that is modulated with a pulse wave, which happens to be in the ELF range, so that it's harmonics, and it's if it causes interference in nonlinear junctions in electronics, it causes reflections which can be sort of unintentionally demodulated back into very low frequency. So that will explain how you can record these pulses. And you can't actually hear voices in audio. That is a misconception. That's the AI playing a trick on you. But what does happen is that these pulses create interference patterns in audio files. Doesn't matter how you record them. Some of them have them more prominent than others. Different techniques and methods. I've got a big microphone there. I just going to try that. But there's a Hear Boost app on the phone which can do it really well. But that's what Charlie uses, this information. He uses it, he approaches the audio as if he were mixing radio frequencies. And then he looks at it that way. I've started building his system, and I'm starting to get a little bit of a result, but it's not the approach I'm going to take eventually. What happens is there are, at least in the very low frequency audio range, in 30 to 100 hertz, you can see some fluctuations, and there's interference from pulses. And also in other regions, there are some little pulse trains sometimes visible. So my idea was more to actually train an AI, or actually to fake these pulses using linguistic data on phoneme durations in language, and then create fake pulse trains. Because I noticed that the pulses that you get to a brainstem, they coincide with phonemes or vowels. And that's what Charlie says as well. So I've already built that data set. All I have to do is to translate that to correct looking or sounding spectral data, and I can convert that to audio. I'll feed that into a machine learning model, and I'll train it to recognize words based on these synthetic files. And then hopefully it will start recognizing the same words in real V2K. That's an approach I'm working on. And I'm also parallel, I'm trying to do what Charlie did as well, which is, he calls it a SWAT rat, or the Delta Echo 9. And that's his sort of approach. I'm also trying that. But yeah, I have more faith in the machine learning approach, because first of all, you can do something else with that as well. You can build a simpler classifier which will just tell you this file does or does not contain V2K, and that would be already a very valuable tool. Now that's focus number one, and focus number two is actually getting it back to text. Yeah.
You're doing really well with this, mate. It's incredible. I really acknowledge the work that you have done as a psychologist, and going through this for so many years now. I've been a victim for well over 30 years, and now I recognize, looking back, how long it's been since World War II, when they brought these torturous programs out, and how many people, if they're doing this to people at nighttime during their dreams, and people act on those, it's astounding. It is just
It's
amazing.
very sinister as well. You know, if you're as a government, if you are engendering fake psychosis in society and fake mental illness to create maximum chaos, there's something very wrong with your society.
And it's
And
so it's so overwhelming that the scientists, the
yeah,
doctors, and the researchers still have people who are paid or who are just so evil, who are unpaid to go and do this to so many people around the world. When you consider that we're being bombarded 24/7 almost with
yeah.
this, and
Well, I
and
think, yeah.
and
Go ahead.
and yeah, and just there are so many people around the world who are going every. I'm a board member of Ecotour in Belgium, and we have board members from all over the world, and they're going through exactly the same thing. It's all to do with the design is about ego and wealth, and one country being bigger and larger and brighter than the other. Well, we're seeing United States. Look at what's happening in the United States at the moment. I mean, I think the percentage is about 58% of people have an education which is lower than uh, a sixth grader. It's dreadful what is happening, and yet they go and use bright people, kind people, caring people, loving people who only want to help the world and get on with their life and help people. They're using the wrong people. So all I can say
I
is
Yeah,
I really appreciate what you're doing here. And it's tough because we go through so much agony with this torture, but I really appreciate the work that you are doing.
thank thank you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, I,
Well, I
recent,
think
I
it's
I recently
yeah.
saw
Go ahead.
also that you had a discussion with our mate in England. What's his
Yes.
name?
Oh, Roy.
With
Yeah,
Roy. Yes,
yeah.
and
Roy and
Roy
I
had
have
been in
become
touch with the
yeah,
physicist, the ex-MI5 physicist Barry
yeah,
Trower,
yeah,
and had a great discussion with him about what to do in the future. And Barry passed along some of the notes, and I think you've been forwarded some of this information too.
yes,
And part of
yes,
the notes talked about blood work, and I believe you've just had some blood work done. And if you could just
yeah,
explain briefly what happened during that process and
yeah.
what they were trying to find.
Well, it was actually I was you know, I was talking with my psychiatrist about this microwave exposure stuff, and that I was kind of worried about what all this microwave is doing to my
Hmm.
body, because you know, if you look at the science, it depends on the frequency and the modulation used, but some of them can be quite lethal while others are harmless. So anyway, even though they feel horrible, they can be harmless. So he said, "Well, don't you want don't you want to get your blood work done?" And he said, "So just a regular test?" And I said to him, "Well, can't I get like the full whammy?" And he said, "Yes, of course. So I'll do that then." So I went and got the full whammy, and everything was pristine condition. But that's also because I have over there, I think I take every day almost 20 supplements to keep myself healthy and go to the gym and try to keep myself healthy, and it pays off apparently. So I don't know what it would have looked like if I didn't have that, but I was very happy to find out that my blood is fine. There's no sign
Excellent.
of any cancer or other weird stuff. So yeah,
Excellent, excellent.
yeah,
I that's fantastic, fantastic,
yeah,
and we'll
yeah.
talk about this further in another discussion.
I'm
I
gonna put up a little list of supplements for TIs. I was working on a PDF document, which are just gonna help people to kind of sustain their health a little bit. And, yeah,
Excellent. Well, look, in another interview, and I promise you it will be at a reasonable time. I'd like to talk about more of the work that you are doing.
yeah,
I'm trying to keep this short today so people have, because I know people have limited time to listen to these discussions. So I'd like to keep it as simple as we can today. But I believe, as I said, I believe it's because of people like you at such a young age that the perpetrators have noted and attacked you and are attacking younger people of your age. And if you could just briefly, this is the reason you started Subliminal Industries. That's the reason that
well,
you want, yeah.
yeah, it's not actually a real thing yet, but I'm trying
Mm-hmm.
to make it. I'm trying to sort of manifest it into reality. So yeah, I just set it up as a kind of a social media name in the beginning, and then I started putting it on everything I have, like my GitHub and everything else, which I have to clean up. There's lots of old stuff that it doesn't work. But yeah, I really like to actually change it into a real organization that is like going to be a watchdog for the age of cognitive warfare. To keep an eye on emerging technologies and how they might be used to subvert human consciousness. That's pretty much what I envision it to become. But right now, it's still pretty much a solo thing. So I'm hoping in the future to, I'm meeting more and more people who are like tech-minded. So hopefully we can join forces at some point and set this thing up and get it going. But first we need some breakthroughs. So we have a court case, and if we have a court case, we have a Subliminal Industries as an organization, I think.
What I love about this, mate, is that while we have this discussion and the B2K is going on in the back of my head while we have this, we are taking away the days of these people that they could devote to looking after their families and doing something worthwhile in the world. They're not. They're wasting their time. And my argument is, I believe in a creator. I respect all religions as long as you don't hurt somebody. But I also respect that, you can't have a man and a woman who started off, in the world at some point, and we have all these different customs and different religions, and you can't have nature looking as beautiful as it is on a gorgeous day in Sydney at the moment with the harbour glistening without there being some creator. And I really believe that unless these people step up and realize that this technology is so well talked about, so well documented, they're going to go through hell. Karma is a big word to a lot of people who are victims at the moment, and karma will happen to these people if they don't stop doing this to really good people. Do you have any final words today before we leave, Daniel?
Well, yes, I'd like to say to all TIs, well, just stay strong and don't believe the V2K, never. It's always trying to mislead you. Just try to figure out what you want to do and what you feel and what your priorities are. Try to live parallel to it as much as you can while it's still there, because I really believe that very soon we're going to have a number of breakthroughs that are going to show just how evil the governments that are involved in this have been behaving, and that they have to really start to to pay for what they've done, and that's just inevitable at this point. So keep hope and stay strong.
Thank you, Daniel. Thanks, Daniel, very much for being here today, and thank you to. You're very welcome, mate. We'll be back together again at some point, and to all targeted individuals around the world, we send our love and support to you. Just stay strong. We know it's difficult at times. I have many friends who are targeted individuals, and they are the most respected people in industries. And you have family and friends who you're slowly educating about what this targeting is. And I hope that today we're able to provide you with some more information that you can take to your families and talk about this, and that they open up a little bit more to about what's going on. So God bless all of you. We'll be back again very shortly with another program for you. And thank you for listening today. Take care.